might have been a predictable winner, at least on paper going into it, but it definitely wasn't predictable how we got there.
Oh, yeah. It was kind of an unexpected ride, I think, for everyone. Atlanta winning, not the surprising part of that, but seeing two of those four teams reaching the semifinals for the first time, one of them in Optic, who had made semis at their own event, and then making grand finals for the first time. I think actually what I love about that is that it speaks to how the talent and competition is spread wide and large throughout the entirety of the league, right? It's clearly not just condensed into teams like Atlanta or Dallas, who are your top teams, certainly, but you have competition in Toronto, competition in Optic. Some of these teams that you weren't looking at usually as being top tier are able to compete with the best, particularly Optic. They had some blunders like TJ on the bomb, challenging Selim. Didn't need to do that. If he did something different, you might be going to that game 5 or potentially taking a lead over Atlanta in that series. And you're seeing a team like Optic. Were you ever expecting someone to say, yeah, they put up a really good fight against Atlanta in the grand finals? Like, you weren't expecting someone to say that, right? So, yes, unexpected journey. Not unexpected that Atlanta won, but I loved it. I loved that I kept saying, what the hell, every single time.
Well, are we talking pre-Chino or post-Chino regarding that last statement there?
Post Chino, in terms of just
even
I'm
post.
specifically talking. I'm specifically talking just at Florida, how the team performed.
Yeah, got it. Emily, you were about to talk there. I apologize.
I mean, I agree. I think when we initially came into the league, we just saw that FaZe had. First of all, their team is just incredibly talented. Second of all, they all synergized well almost immediately. And thirdly, they had the best look at what Modern Warfare was. Like, they were playing Modern Warfare the best of any other team. And I think what you're seeing now, to some extent, despite the fact that I say indubitably, like, I don't think you can argue that Atlanta and Dallas are the two best teams, and they're like a cut above the rest of the league still. I think what you're also seeing is the rest of the league catching up, maybe making some roster moves, maybe not, but whether they are or not, having a better understanding of how they want to play the game. And that is what we saw here. I think the thing that most surprised me out of this weekend, though, if people remember from the last show, is that I fully expected the Rocker to go further. Like, I basically said, if FaZe don't win, like, this is Rocker's tournament to win. They match up really well against FaZe. This has to be, like, their time. And they didn't even make it to semis. So that was probably the most shocking thing to me from what I expected out of this weekend.
Arda, I would like to chime in really quick and just add on that note that everything that I said as well on kind of these unexpected teams being competitive, I feel like the tournament structure of this season makes recency bias a really brutal thing, right? Like, I'm saying, oh, wow, I didn't expect a lot from Toronto, but that's because I also hadn't seen Toronto play in like 10 years. So I think that kind of compounds it too in some of the times, the way we look at these teams and how surprised we are, when really it's like, oh, you just haven't seen them in a month, so you forgot.
Well, so Minnesota, you make a very good point there, Emily. And I said on the show last week that if Minnesota loses to any team other than Atlanta in this series, then it starts to become a concern. With that said, though, when you look at the standings, they're still 4th where they had been, right? But now that label of, well, can they get the job done starts to creep in. And I know, Easy Mac, we're going to get to some max stats a little bit later on. I want to save those so that we have something to look forward to here. But more generally, this was a weekend where a lot of teams emerged as possible contenders, at least coming out of this weekend. Whether it's going to be sustained is another conversation altogether. But how do you assess that middle of the pack now, with OGLA, Toronto, New York having strong showings, London in the mix, whether or not it's disappointing this past home series or not, that's up for debate. And then Florida and Minnesota historically having success as well. How do you assess that middle of the pack?
So right now it's really difficult because you really want to start with the respawns. So I look at Hardpoint first, and then I go to S&D, because those are the 4 of the 5 modes that you play. And so you think of the Rocker and New York, to me, are like our biggest competition outside of Chicago and Dallas, just because New York is actually fundamentally I think the best Hardpoint team out there right now. I think they play it really, really well. I think Lamar has them like in order, and Bobble. That team's like really scary, especially like when we scrim them. It's like everyone's trying as hard as they can now because they want to learn exactly what they're doing. And then Minnesota's just been they're kind of built just like us, even though it doesn't seem like it. Like they have really two aggro SMGs, and then they have like Silly and Godrex over their Slayer flexes, and then Assault's kind of like that laser beam in the back. So they've really matched up well with us too. But then you got Optic, who everyone knew was going to be good at some point, and it seems like they're clicking. I kind of want to see if Chino can keep like getting better because he kind of had a rough event, and I think if
Yeah.
he's better with TJ, I think then they get even to that next level with like New York and Minnesota, and then Toronto actually they're really good online. Like they've been really good in scrims. We like scrimming them because they're one of those teams that they're always going to go really hard regardless. And Cammy's actually he's really good. I think he
Kimmy
dropped
was phenomenal this week.
yeah he's got the most kills I've ever seen in one game in a scrim. He dropped 53. So he's like really
Whoa.
talented. Yeah.
Damn.
He's
How's
really
Watch out,
Sim.
about that.
Sim's his record is at risk.
Yeah, so he's really good. So Toronto is kind of like, if they match up well against the team, they're going to go really far. Which I mean, this tournament they had a bunch of good matchups going to the semis. So I thought we were going to play them in the finals at one point, but yeah, Optic came out strong. But so it's really murky.
So Easy Mac, Atlanta, really the biggest challenge was against the subliners in the semifinals, taking you to a game 5, even though you were able to close things out and search and destroy there with a 6-3 win. When you look back on the weekend and you just assess your team's overall performance, how do you compare it to previous tournaments and tournament wins?
So last tournament, even though we got second, we were all like really disappointed because if you're not first, you're last in our eyes, kind of, with like the reputation we built. So even getting that second place, we looked at our hard point and was like, this just isn't where the level where we needed to be at. So going into this event, I was really only worried about our hard point. That was what I was watching closely, and I thought we performed actually way better than we did the event before. So that was a plus. I still think our S&D needs a little bit of work, but overall, I think we played how we wanted to. I thought New York was going to be the biggest competition by far. Like against us, I thought they were going to match up well in the hard points, and I thought we would have to definitely win the 2 S&Ds. And it turns out it was a little bit different, but yeah, that was the one series I was really scared. Actually, I was sweating the whole time.